So he's in the Garden of Gethsemane now in Matthew 26 and verse 36. It says, then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee. And he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. So let me hold it right there. So that's what I'm trying to say. When it's time to get drawn to the cross, we should not be distressed about it. We should not be sorrowful about it. Jesus had a different reason of being sorrowful. He had death coming. He had sins laid upon him. He knew that he would be whipped. He knew that he would put a crown of thorns on his head. He knew he would be ridiculed. He knew he would be blasphemed. But he goes anyway. But he prays. But he says in verse 38, then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. He says, stay here and watch with me. He went a little further and he fell on his face and prayed, saying, oh, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. You want to laugh at me? I go through my temptations. I ask you to pray for me, but it's not enough to keep you awake. But you want to see me? I told you my soul is troubled. I'm going through because the trouble was whether I go or not. That's a temptation. And he tells Peter, you want to go through this? You better watch and pray lest you fall in temptation. And sometimes we don't understand that we're being tempted every day. He taught them in the Lord's Prayer. He said, pray that the Lord would not lead you into temptation, but deliver you from evil, because temptation comes from the devil. The Bible says in Matthew, when he was taken out of the water, the Spirit came down upon him and led him into the wilderness. And after 40 days and 40 nights, the devil tempted him. So here he is. He said, watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. He said the reason is because the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. I said he had to get to flesh to be crucified. He couldn't be crucified in spirit. He had to be crucified in flesh. And when you're in the flesh, you feel what the flesh feels. He's about to go to the cross for you and me. Again, a second time, he went away and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. And he came and he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them this time. He left them, went away again. I guess who can help you? Who sleeps? You sleep on Sunday. You sleep on Bible study time. You sleep when I need you to pray. You sleep on everything. I can't use you when you're sleeping. You're telling people what's going on in your life. You're telling what's happening, and they're sleeping on you. So he says he leaves them, went away again, prayed the third time. Now, this is Jesus. Folk telling you, give it to God, leave it at the altar. Sometimes you can't leave stuff at the altar. You got to keep on praying about it. Pray when your friends fall asleep. Pray when the church falls asleep. Pray when the evangelist and everybody else falls asleep on you. You keep on praying. And you ask God for some help. Then he came to his disciples, verse 45, and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? COVID is over. You ain't saying nothing. Pandemic is down. You're still resting. Come on to church. I know you're going to laugh at home. I understand the flesh is weak. It says what? Behold, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Oh, my God. He says in verse 46, rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. I want to go back up to verse 40. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. I want to talk today about overcoming temptation. I think I preached already, but I got to teach now. Overcoming temptation. So, what is temptation? Temptation is a weapon of the devil. It has an assignment to draw you into making some type of move that is designed to damage some part or all of your total well-being. That's what temptation is. It wants to destroy. It may not take you all the way out, but it can hurt you right now, especially what's going on for you. And it causes you to make a move. Like Jesus, he could have made a move that was not according to the will of God. That's why he had to pray. That's why he had to ask God to help him out in this. This cup that he was about to take was a bitter cup. It was a cup full of sorrow and sin. And he was feeling so hurt within him that he knew that God didn't help him. He would have did like everyone else would have. I'm not dying for them. No, this is not what I want the cross for. But Jesus, he deals with it because temptation can either be natural or spiritual. Now, spiritual temptation deals with moving you away from God. Natural temptation moves you away from a safety zone. So if you are tempted spiritual, you would do things like listen to soothsayers, or you will listen to horoscopes, or you will listen to Ouija boards, or all kind of foolishness that don't add up to the gospel of Christ. All of a sudden, you're a spiritualist. You're holistic. And you are God. You are some spiritual makeup something. But meanwhile, you don't know you have been tempted. And you have fallen away from God. It could be whatever you're challenged with. Temptation will say, what does God got to do with it? How is God going to help you? Can't you see people are sleeping on you? People don't care about you. They don't care if you die. They don't care even if you prosper. They don't care because you're on nobody's radar. But how many of you know that in the spirit, you're always on God's radar? And you will always be on the devil's radar because the devil understands spiritual stuff. And so we find people today falling away from the faith, falling away from the commandments of God, falling away from the promises of God, leaning on other things like rabbit's foot and Easter eggs. No, baby, he rose on the third day. I'm not falling away from that. I'm not being tempted from that. No, I know that's where my hope comes from. Just like Jesus, he had to tell his disciples, I got to pray because I know where my help is coming from. And I know the Father, he's going to help me because I'm doing his assignment. And as long as he stayed faithful in the natural, he could have just gave up. He looked. He saw Judas coming. He saw him coming with the army. He saw them before they even got close. He tried to tell them, watch out, pray. Watch and pray simply means you look at what's happening and you pray at the same time. Look out because somebody's coming. My betrayal is coming. He's coming with some army people to arrest me. And we saw the temptation of the flesh. Peter takes out a knife like that was going to win the battle. Cuts off a man's ear like that's going to win the battle. Jesus picked up the ear and said, man, I'm sorry, Peter's in the flesh. And slapped it back on his ear. He said, this is not what I prayed for, because if I would have prayed for this, Peter would have still been sleeping. He would have woke up and saw no more destruction because I would have called the angels. It would have looked worse than Ukraine right now. The kind of warfare that would have went on if Jesus would have called his heavenly army. So how does temptation work then, Bishop? Well, temptation works at a target. And the target is some type of desire that is developed within the mind, or it's developed within the body, or it's developed within the spirit. And that desire is connected to some type of flesh or spiritual weakness to do something wrong or unwise. That's all temptation is. For us to be exposed to our desire that's not lined up with God. And we all have these pockets when we are in the flesh where bacteria and toxic resides, and if we're not careful, it will rise. And then Satan throws the temptation right at the target. And don't you think that he can't hit. The devil knows who to hit, when to hit, and how to hit. You ask anybody who walked by faith and they get caught up by temptation, I don't know how this happened. I thought my intercessors got me. I thought I was doing it right. But I found myself wrong, and I found myself in an unwise situation. Because it has to be unwise. Because when the Spirit of God comes, he gives us wisdom to know what to do, what to say, where to go, how to do it. And when we find ourselves falling from it, it's the wrong choice. So what we have to do, we have to protect the targets that's within us. I know what my desire is that's not of God. Some of us dream about it. Some of us dreaming, waking up in the middle of the night, fighting with the devil, because God is showing you something. We're fighting with things because it's within us. You know, all you have to eat sometime is something heavy on a nice hot night. Pizza? No Panda? Panda first, then pizza. And then you start having these nightmares. And all it is the pizza, you know. In your mind, all of a sudden, is going to those toxic places. Talking about you felt the devil on you last night. There's no devil on you. How the devil going to be on you and you walking in the power of God? Imagination. Because I'm going to get to something so significant about temptation, that blows my mind. So that's how it works. But why temptation? Why would the devil use temptation? Because from the beginning of time, it has always worked. Ask Adam and Eve. It always works. Temptation has never failed the devil. He gets the best with the art of temptation. That's why he's called the tempter. Why temptation? Because, watch this now. This is what gets me. It allows the devil to be removed from being the one to blame. That's why I'm trying to tell you, ain't no demon laying on you. That's just your pleasure in your mind. The devil might have made you do it, but you did it. It wasn't him. Now, I'm not talking about folk who were filled with demonic spirits, because that's not temptation. They just devilish. But when we are tempted, the devil, he moves out the blame. When he tempted Jesus, if Jesus would have jumped off the pinnacle, would that have been the devil's fault? No. Just because the devil said do it, that don't mean you have to do it. When he say jump, you don't have to jump. I don't care how much the devil tried to show you your power. Don't let him tempt you to try to think that what power you have can help you overcome the strongest of a temptation. Why temptation? Because the devil knows that even though many people, he knows that many people are not mindful of his ways. And they are not always on the lookout of being the target. In other words, look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, why not you? Why not you? You think you can escape? If you got it going on, you walking with the word, you prophesying, you proclaiming the Lord's death till he comes, you walking with integrity, you walking with hope, why not you? You're a good fight for the devil. See, the devil, he's not tempting those who are already fallen. Temptation don't work for them. They already got it in their mind. I'm in this. I steal, I rob, I con, I do all this. But you, why not you? But we think we won't fall. We think that we won't be tempted. Meanwhile, we're tempted all the time and not recognizing that these are the problems that the devil is bringing towards me, and I'm getting involved. This is why Christians say sometimes, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I know. I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have been there. But we were tempted, and we walked into. So why temptation again? Because the devil knows that humans are prone to walk after the flesh. He knows, yes. He knows that we are prone to walk after the flesh. Jesus did. But see, when he was in the wilderness, when he was fasting and praying, he wasn't in the flesh. Because the devil tempted him 3 times when he was weak in the flesh, but he was in the spirit. But here, he's in the flesh because he's living after 3 years of that. He's doing ministry. So he's flesh now because his flesh has to go on the cross. And so when we're in the flesh, we will walk after the flesh, which simply means we will make choices according to our flesh. So when we have these hidden desires, when we have these things, these toxic traits, we can fall to as being a target. So why temptation again, Bishop? Because many people do not know how to fight the devil in prayer. Nor does the word of God have any root in many people. As such, many people are spiritually weak. And how I can say this is because Jesus said, my flesh is weak. The spirit is willing. As long as we can always feed our spiritual being, we will always have the strength to overcome temptation. So I talked about how temptation worked, why temptation. So here's my problem with temptation. When a person is taken by temptation, they rather play the blame game than to own up to their own fault. Oh, if the restaurant didn't send that fine waitress to my room, I wouldn't have pulled her in. So it's the restaurant's fault for sending a cute-looking, woman to bring your lunch to your room? I think that happened to Kobe Bryant. God bless him. In some hotel, he got cooked up or something. Just because you're set up don't mean you have to fall for the setup. Don't blame the setup. Oh, man, they had this out there for me. So that's a problem I have. We have to own up to our falling so we can be strengthened the next time around. And the other problem I have with it is that the devil wins most of the time because blaming keeps the focus. It keeps the victim's focus off the real issue. Because if you're going to sit there and blame everybody, you're not focusing on your issue. Your issue is that desire that's within you. And as a result, we never get delivered from the real issue. So next time, he sent a better looking one. Next time, he sent a bigger one. Next time, he'll send something that you really cannot resist. That's why Paul says when you resist the devil, he flees from you because he realizes this temptation don't get you no more. But there is good news regarding temptation. In 1 Corinthians 10 and 13, we find out that even in temptation, God is faithful. That's why Jesus kept calling on him. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except as is common to man. But, Paul says, God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you will be able to bear it. So you don't have to blame the setup. You can walk right by the setup and just say, oh, man, I saw the devil coming a mile away. I mean, isn't it good now you can, after the temptation has lapsed, and you look back and say, wow, that devil must have thought I was going to be sleeping today. He must have thought I was going to walk weak. He must have thought I was going to give up. But God is faithful. Why? Because he never leaves us and never forsakes us. And even in our weakest moments, like Christ, we can call on him. And the second part of the good news is found in James chapter 1, verse 12. And this ought to bless you. James says that there's a crown of life waiting for us. Look what he says in James 1, and I mean, not Paul, James. James says in 1 and 12. Blessed, we love that word, is the man who what? Endures temptation. This is why you're blessed. For when he has been approved, what you've been approved of? That I'm delivered from this toxicity that's within me. It's no longer a big target for the devil to attack. And I've overcame it. And I succeeded. So now you've been approved to go to another level.
We worship you, Jesus. Hallelujah, Lord.